thank you guys for turning out, and thank everybody that's here. Like I said, I'm Vinny Doherty. I was a captain with New York City Fire. Spent 25 years, 58 days. They told me I couldn't run burning buildings anymore, so they put me out to pasture. We're a 12,000 person fire department. Pretty large. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Scylla Foundation, how it came about, why it's here, what our mission is, and ask you to help us raise the funds. And I'm going to present a plaque. It's a piece of World Trade Center steel to Carpet One store, and then I'm going to go into some stories about 9/11, some of the things I experienced, and some of the things that other people I know experienced. So, again, I'm here because of the Scylla Foundation and the partnership that Carpet One stores, along with Mohawk Industries, have developed with the Scylla Foundation. The Scylla Foundation is named after Stephen Scylla, who was a firefighter. He was assigned to Squad 1, Special Operations Command. And when I say Special Operations Command, it's on 9/11, we were 400 members out of the 12,000. We had about 13 units distributed across New York City, the 5 boroughs, which is about 325 square miles. And Special Operations, all 400 were highly trained, and we have the equipment to go along with that. Wherever a firefighter can't go, that's when they would call Special Operations in, call in our rescue companies, our squad companies. Anything that, whenever a firefighter gets in trouble, we're the ones that go in and get them. We're the ones that hang off the skyscrapers, pulling the window washers in when their equipment fails. We're the ones that are down in the trenches, digging the trenches, collapse situations, things like that. So all 13 on 9/11, all 13 units responded in immediately from all over the city. We lost, there were 2,753 people, souls, that were murdered that day by Islamic fundamentalists using a long aluminum cylinder, which is an incendiary device that they crashed right into the towers. So, Stephen was brought up on Staten Island, which is a borough of New York City. And if I was to explain what Staten Island is, I'd have to call it the civil service ghetto. It was filled with fire, police, sanitation workers, a lot of city workers, middle class island for the most part. Everybody was very friendly, and they had a lot of common connections. And most of the common connections that they had, being law enforcement, fire, EMS, they had a need to serve. Stevens was the youngest of 7. His parents had a very strong faith. And part of the faith had to do with being a follower of St. Francis of Assisi. St. Francis, and what they did was they instilled St. Francis's words, which is basically, we're on this earth for a short time. While we're here, we should do good. We should do the right thing. So Stephen's parents instilled that in him and his siblings. When Stephen was 8 years old, his father passed away. A year and a half later, his mother passed away. So Stephen was basically brought up by his older siblings on Staten Island. But he had a strong foundation from his parents. And he entered the New York City Fire Department. He wanted to serve. And that's going to be a common thing, a common theme throughout what I'm going to tell you. Not only fire, law enforcement, EMS, but our military. We're all the same. We're not in it for the money. We don't get paid a lot. We could certainly make a lot more on the private sector, but we do it because of that service element. If you want to think of it one way, the military, our brave soldiers, our frontline defense on foreign soil, law enforcement, fire, EMS, are our front line domestically. If something happens, we're responding to, just like we did on 9/11. Stephen came in the fire department. He made it up into special operations. Not an easy task. He did it. A proud firefighter. He worked on 9/10 night tour. Our night tour goes from 6 o'clock at night to 9 o'clock in the morning. He had a golf game set up with his brothers on Staten Island for 9/11. He had an early relief in New York City fire, just like the fire departments around here or anywhere in the nation. I'm sure we all get in there early. We don't live in the city, and we have to beat the traffic, but we would be there early anyway. Every day that we go to work, we have a smile on our face because we're going in to another family. A lot of guys filled the firehouse that morning, so Stephen took an early relief somewhere around 8:30. He got in his car, headed home to Staten Island for tea time. Halfway home, or while he was still in Brooklyn, when he goes from Squad 1, he has to go down toward the Verrazano Narrows, the Verrazano Bridge, to go over into Staten Island. When he's going down towards the bridge, if he looks in his rearview mirror, he can see the towers right behind him. He also had a scanner in his car. So what he did, he probably heard units responding in, and he probably looked over his shoulder, probably saw the smoke coming from the World Trade Center, stopped his car immediately, called his wife, and said, "Tell my brothers I'll catch up to them. Something has happened in Manhattan. I'm going back to the firehouse." He turned around, went back to the firehouse. Squad 1 had already responded. He went in, got his gear, put it in his car, took off to the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. The Brooklyn Battery Tunnel connects northern Brooklyn, goes under the Upper Harbor area, right into the lowest part of Manhattan called Battery Park. The tunnel itself is 1.7 miles long, the longest tunnel in the US. And he's got another quarter to half a mile to get up to the World Trade Center. Stephen got to the tunnel. NYPD had shut it down tight. Shut every entrance, all the bridges, all the tunnels connecting Manhattan. All ingoing was shut down. It was only for outgoing. They needed to evacuate all around southern Manhattan. So what he did was he ditched his car someplace, put his gear on, and when you put your gear on, a firefighter puts his gear on, you got your boots, you got your bunker gear, you got your helmet, and you probably have quite a few tools in your pockets. Probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about 60 pounds. He took off running down to the tunnel and through the tunnel, up on the other side, and he got to the World Trade Center. He was probably in the South Tower. South Tower was second tower hit, first tower to collapse, and he got caught in that initial collapse. He didn't have to be there. He was off, going to enjoy a nice day. But because of that service, that instinct that he has, he knew he would be of some help, and he ran back in. A couple of weeks afterwards, his siblings decided, or months afterwards, his siblings decided, listen, we can't let his memory fade. We lost 343 firefighters that day. 104 of them came from special operations. There were 60 law enforcement, 37 from the Port Authority, Police Department, Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, who was the jurisdictional of that site, and 23 NYPD, all with that same service connection, to serve, do the right thing, do good. So his family got together, his siblings, and said, let's form a foundation. And they called it the Stephen Silla Foundation. In order to raise money and funds to do whatever they could, they initially wanted to take care of first responders, especially the widows and orphans that were left from the destruction of the World Trade Center. They set about raising money, and they came up with the idea, since Stephen ran through the tunnel with his gear on, let's create a 5K race. They didn't know how it was going to happen. They put the story out. They got an overwhelming response. Overwhelming. Firefighters, not just in New York City, the surrounding regions, surrounding states, and from across the nation, came with their gear to run through the 5K race, 3.3 miles. We had other runners from running clubs come in and just run. People from all over New York came just to run and to help us raise funds. It was so successful that we put it on every year since. And we started a new thing shortly thereafter, which is called the Towers Run, where we would get a tower and we'd run up 110 stories to raise funds. The last one that we did, we had the honor of putting it on in the springtime in the new World Trade Center Tower 1 that had just opened, and the observatory had just opened. Guys came from all over, thousands of people, just to run up 110 stories, actually 108 stories, to the observation deck. We had a nice thing up there for them, nice party, collation. We also allowed people, if they raised some funds and they couldn't do it, they did the virtual run, and we put them in an elevator. Brought them up. So they'd be part of the coalition. Right? But we were raising a lot of funds. What do we use these funds for? Initially, first responders. Making sure law enforcement, fire, not just in New York, but all over the nation, are taken care of. We took care of the widows and orphans. We took care of families impacted by 9/11. We moved on. Sandy struck us, Hurricane Sandy. It impacted a good part of southern Staten Island, the beach areas, the shore areas, Brooklyn, Queens, Nassau County. As it hit that, that's where a lot of our responders live. Whatever wasn't covered by, and they're still recovering today, they're still rebuilding, especially a small section of Queens called Breezy Point, which is basically a sandbar, but it just happened that a lot of police and fire lived right there, very close together. On Sandy, we lost 60 homes. One home caught on fire because it got flooded, shorted out the electric, and they were so close together. The area was initially built for bungalows, and you get a fire, a cop get in there and buy the building. All of a sudden, they blow it out, and they were right next to each other, and we couldn't get any water on it. As a matter of fact, during Sandy, the Rockaway Peninsula and Breezy Point is all the way down on the end, at the end of the big sandbar, and the ocean, Atlantic Ocean, hit the bay, and the only bridge over there was the Marine Park Bridge from Brooklyn, and we couldn't even get our rigs in there to fight the fire. They were desperately calling for Brooklyn dispatcher, just send us an engine. We have the firefighters. We have the manpower. Just send us an engine, and we couldn't even get an engine open. We lost 60 houses in conflagration before we were able to get there and get it put out. So we helped them. We raised funds for them. Just recently, if you remember, you probably got it out here in your newspapers, 2 police officers were eating lunch in their car down in the middle of Brooklyn, Bedford-Stuyvesant. guy came up behind him and basically executed them. Came up behind him without them knowing and just kept on shooting into the car, striking them both in the head, killing them instantly. What we did, that was in December 20th, I believe, 2014. In January, we decided as a foundation that we should start raising money to see what we do for them. Within 6 weeks, we had $1 million raised. We used that money to pay off the mortgages for Police Officer Lou, LIU, and Police Officer Ramos. And the remainder of the money we give to the families to help them through this period. Just recently, in the spring, we had a volunteer firefighter, a captain, got caught in a private residence fire, got overcome, died 2 days later in the hospital as a result. Again, we raised funds and we paid off his mortgage for his family and supported his family. So the money that we use, 95 to 97 cents per dollar, goes out. The battalion chief that is taking care of this program that I'm on now, we call it the Shadow Box program. He's a volunteer. Probably spent too much time at home. His wife kicked him out. Said, go out to work. Enough with this retirement. So he goes down and he puts 40 to 60 hours in a week just running this program to put us out here. And I'll talk about this now. What we did back in 08, we're always looking for that next opportunity to do good, to be a positive. There was a veteran, a young veteran, from Staten Island. We didn't know him. He returned from the war. He was a quadruple amputee. All 4 limbs were blown off. He survived. The miracle of modern medicine. Brendan Morocco was his name. We found out about him and we said, we have to do something. So we set about raising funds. We didn't know what we were going to do, but we knew we had to do something. It was decided that if we could bring a little self-respect back to him, allow him to live as normal life as possible by building him a smart home, getting all the new technology that we possibly could into that home to make it easier for him so he feels normal. That's what we'll need to do. Very expensive in New York City to do something like that. We did it. We got it done, all the way down to putting heat in his driveway for when it snows. He doesn't have to shovel or anything like that. Ramps, etc., etc. Everything's controlled off his iPad and or iPhone. So that was a great success for us. During this time period, as we were doing this, we realized how many vets actually do come home with amputated limbs. We look at our kids, we look at ourselves. You probably know the Twins lineup. You probably know all about other sports teams and people making millions of dollars, and you know their stats, you know their names. But do you know any of the names of the 5 guys who came back from the wars that are quadruple amputees? Do you know about the 55 triple amputees, or the double amputees, or the single amputees? Guys that are trying to live a normal life. They're our real heroes. They are the bravest. Just like we are. In the fire service, we're called the bravest. But they are much braver than us, in my mind. They're my heroes. So we decided that we needed to do something. So at the same time this was going on and the work we were doing, I have a strong faith. There's a reason for things that happen. Somehow, some way, the CEO of Carpet One found out about what we're doing. He did a little research on the foundation. did a little research into our work. He liked it, set up a meeting, came out to see us. He said, I need to help you out. You're doing good. So we said, great, Carpet One. Yeah, it's a way to get supplies for the houses we build, and we didn't know how many houses we were going to build. So he put the word out to his suppliers. Right away, Mohawk Industries stepped right up the bat. They said they will supply all the materials, the rugs, the flooring. Carpet One will supply the labor, and we'll get this thing done for whatever houses you build. And we said, that's fantastic. Now, as time goes on, we developed a nice relationship with him. And I don't know whether it's true, but why let the truth get in the way of a good story? They were probably out to dinner one night, had a couple of drinks, and the CEO said, you know, I'm not doing enough. What more can I do? And they came up with a plan. Carpet One has 750 plus stores in the nation. If we asked every customer that came into a Carpet One store that bought something for a $10 donation, if we had 10% of the people just give that donation, the Silla Foundation would realize $400,000 a year. If we upped that to 50%, it would be $8 million a year, and that would create and build a lot of smart homes. So, came up with a plan. Carpet One corporate put a lot of this material that you see out, did an advertising campaign, invited us down to their conferences, and we put on a presentation to all the store owners, and a lot of them came right back and said, yes, we will. So we committed as a foundation, with the backing of Carpet One and Mohawk Industries, we committed to building 200 smart homes for our veterans, the most catastrophically injured veterans that come back from the wars. We're going to do it one way or another, and with the help of Carpet One and Mohawk, it's going to get done faster. Presently, we have 15 homes built all throughout the nation. I believe the closest one to here is in Duluth. We have 14 that are being built as we speak, and we have another 12 that are in the planning stage, and they're all assigned to these catastrophically injured vets. We as a foundation, and our project manager, Jack Ohm, we said, what else can we do as a foundation to support Carpet One and Mohawk in this effort? So what Jack came up with was, if we take a piece of steel from the World Trade Center, we put it in a shadow box, thus the shadow box tour for the Bravest. If we do that and we go around to all 750 stores to give them a little backing, a little oomph, the story behind it, what they are doing and why they are doing it, they being the boots on the ground, where the rubber hits the road, they're the ones that are asking for the donations, the salespeople of each store. If we come to them, give them something tangible that they could point to with each customer, then we might hit that 50% mark, or go greater, which would help out also. So that's what we decided to do. And all Jack had to do was, he didn't call everybody up. He just went to, I happened to be, I don't know why I went. I live in Nassau County. It's a 45 to an hour ride through traffic, through Queens and Brooklyn to get to Staten Island, plus a $17 fare to go across the bridge. But I went to the Retirement Members Association, FDNY, on Staten Island one night because I was asked to do it from the Tribute Center. The Tribute Center is a 9/11 museum and tour service. It's located right next to 10 and 10, right across from where the South Tower was. I worked there as a lieutenant in 10 and 10 during the 93 bombing. I now volunteer for that tribute center. They call me a docent. I never knew what a docent was until they started calling me it. I thought they were cursing at me, but it turns out to be an educated tour guide. And look at myself in the mirror, I said, really? So I give the tours, volunteer for that. But they asked me to go over and speak to see if anybody else from the Retired Members Association would come over and be a docent also. And during that meeting, on the side, right around St. Patty's Day, they had corned beef and cabbage. Firefighters don't go anywhere unless there's food and some adult beverages. But they had some meal there, and the guy just came up to me. He says, you know, I like what you said. Did you hear about? And really, the next day I gave Jack a call. I says, you need anybody? I'll be available. Within days, he had 40 firefighters volunteer to take a week at a time out of their schedules and go across the country. We started New York, sent one van up to Maine, down and around, across Pennsylvania into Michigan, and now we're out here. We started that the end of April, beginning of May. We sent another van south, so we have 2 guys on the road every week. I'm going to leave it at Minneapolis Airport tomorrow night. Somebody will be in here on Sunday, pick it up, and continue on the way. All right? Just to bring it out to all the Carpet One stores. So, with this, I want to present this to you. Let me go on this side. I like the patch.
Okay.
Okay. I want to present this to your store, and we want to say thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I hope you'll put it in a prominent place. And point to it when you have customers come in. If they want to give more than $10, that's fine too. And figure out a way to collect it. I know some stores just put it on the end of the invoice and you send a check or whatever. So whatever way you do it would be great. Okay?
Yeah, this is great.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you everybody for coming.